Good. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Technical Women's Network October bonus event.
Oh.
I am Barbara Tyron, Senior Advisor, External Relations at EPRI. Thank you to the TWN and CPS Energy teams for their terrific support of today's webcast. It is my huge personal pleasure and professional privilege to introduce Paula Gould Williams, President and Chief Executive Officer, CPS Energy, the nation's largest vertically integrated electric and gas municipal utility. Paula joined CPS Energy in 2004, becoming Group Executive Vice President, Financial and Administrative Services, and Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer in 2008. After assuming her current leadership role in July 2016, she launched People First, which is acts of excellence, professionalism, and authenticity that make others feel better. Paula was also the catalyst for Women Empowered at CPS Energy, an employee resource group now numbering 100 members, and many are with us here today in San Antonio. As a CPS Energy employee who Paula mentors told me, quote, Paula is truly about people, open-hearted, open-minded, with transformational qualities. She is an extraordinary human being who happens to be a woman. Please join me in welcoming a member of EPRI's Board of Directors, Paula Gould Williams, who will outline her vision of leadership.
Oh, wow, thank you. So once again, I am absolutely appreciative of all the blessings that I've received in my life. And here we are, excited about where women are in a technical industry with a lot of hope. I am proud to be a member of EPRI. It gives us such benefit to have a global organization working on some of the toughest technical issues and really forward-looking in terms of bringing partners from around the globe together. I appreciate, Barbara, thank you from my heart as a board member, and then the Technical Women's Network that you have assembled. I did not know that when I joined, so great to know that. Great to be a part of the WEC organization and a very humble recipient of the Champion Award this past year. And I am continually proud of my CPS Energy peeps, the people here from Women Empowered. I didn't know if I had actually inspired the group. I actually feel like they were going to do it anyway. So, but all kinds of goodness. I'm here, and we're going to have a chat. I'll gladly talk about leadership. I want to reinforce that we have the ability to stop and answer questions along the way from people in the audience we have here, as well as the app that we have going. I want to try to make it a dialogue, even though I may not be able to see you. I want to hear from anyone who has a question. And I'll just start broadly, though. Leadership. There's a huge focus on it, and I think what I like people to understand from my perspective is leadership is not a recipe of things. It isn't all about the technical expertise. The people who I have been most fortunate to know over the years are those who've taught me the balance between technical knowledge and interpersonal emotional intelligence. And leadership for me is someone who's willing to share that technical aspect and then be empathetic enough to be able to drive not just themselves but others to excellence. Maybe embedded in that, the left side, I'm an accountant, so I think of debits and credits. But on the left side, when I'm thinking about the emotional intelligence that someone has to have, I'm thinking about it, again, not from the ego of I've been successful and I'm always going to be successful and I fight for my success and my position and title and all those things. And the reason why that's interesting but not necessarily always helpful, because in some cases it becomes the cocoon that someone uses to actually deflect more learning and more growth and more input. And I definitely feel where the industry is now, where technology is headed, everything from what customers are experiencing to the things that we have to do on the power generation and supply aspect. We are in learning mode in this industry, and we just can't let our egos get in the way. We can't be superior. Now, I will say, here's a real challenge for women. And I hate global generalizations, and so if I put this out here, I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I will say that women do have a perfection complex. How do I know? Because I've had one for a large part of my life, and I heard the president of Texas Women's University talk about it. She says, when we're raising our children, if we have children or nieces or nephews, when we raise them, we say things when we have little boys and they're competing, they're in competition and little league and things like that, and they fail, we go, get up and try it again. Get back in there. It's a season. It's not one game. We're trying for the championship. Of course, now we give prizes for just about anything, even losing. But it is the act of teamwork and the encouragement. So we drive young men to bravery. We teach them bravery. Young girls, oftentimes when they're in competitive events and they don't do well and they get emotionally crushed by a defeat or some failure or a lack of coordination or whatever it is, we pat them on the back and say, well, if you really don't want to go back at it, pick something else you like. Pick something else that you're going to be good at. So we drive our young girls for perfection. That was profound for me. I just heard that analysis this year. That's profound for me. I mean, I did, realize that, early on I wasn't great at everything. And so I tried things that I thought I was going to be good at, and I played to my strengths. But all the time, what I really realized is when I did fail, it was crushing. And I didn't know what to do with it. And it limited me, and it actually created a bigger cocoon of self-doubt. What I realized is whether you're a man or you're a woman, it's what you do in recovery from failure. It's what you've learned from it, how you rise above it, and doing that and putting yourself in learning mode and being willing to say, you know what, I messed that up. I didn't think about that correctly. I was wrong. Because when you admit that, that means no one else can threaten you with that. You own it, and you can move above it, and you can transition, and you can share it. And so that, I think, is kind of the high-level thought about leadership that I always like to share.
Great, thank you. That's actually a very valuable insight. I like that one that you just shared. So it's not just me talking about you being a leader, Paula. I happen to have been at 3 different gala dinners in the last 4 months where you received a national award, or on behalf of CPS Energy, and I understand there was actually a 4th award given to you last night. So can you talk about, and then we just had a prior presentation where I learned of even more awards that have been coming into this organization, and deservedly so. So national awards are not given out every day, but maybe here they are. But can you tell us, how do you inspire a team here and help execute what is obviously best practices and excellence so that you qualify for all these awards?
I would say that, in addition to putting myself in learning mode, I really ask our organization to always be in learning mode and think about what we can do differently. I've been at the utility almost 15 years. It'd be 15 years in 2 days. So when I first came in, it was interesting. It hadn't been that much change. Wind energy was kind of the new alternative, and we would have hard years trying to think about how we're going to move through things. And people would say often things like, oh, I sure hope that this year isn't as bad as last year. I sure hope that we don't have as much change this year as we had last year. Can we stop doing all this adoption of new activities and just have a simple straight through year? And that wasn't unique to CPS Energy. That was, I think, a norm. People wanted normalization, so to speak, or they wanted a mature company where they could feel like they were having a much more comfortable approach to activities. I have not heard that question in years now, maybe 2 or 3 years now. Change is the new normal. Driving towards making ourselves better is an evolutionary, constant, erratic, volatile place to be. But on the other side of it, it's this growth place. It's a great place to be. It lets us ask ourselves, how can we serve our customers better? How can we listen better and act more? And I would tell you that essence of who we have become in terms of being more comfortable with change, and we still have to work on it, that begets excellence. Doesn't mean perfection, it means excellence. And we don't set out to win awards. I mean, we don't start the year and say, boy, we have a metric on how many awards we can win. But we also put in our DNA, let's go back and reflect. What do we learn? How do we grow? What does it look like? We benchmark ourselves both quantitatively and qualitatively. And we're not afraid to say, we think we did a good job. And we want to compare ourselves, and we share that. We share the focus on doing better in customer service, better in reliability. We share that back with our customers because our customers give us the privilege to manage these assets and these operations, and we want to share the awards with them. The awards are not all for me or for the company. They're actually for the community that owns the utility and has been doing so for 76 years. So we use it to prove to them that we are not resting on our laurels, that we are here to make sure that excellence is at the forefront, that we measure, and that we're always shooting for how can we serve them better.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that response, and going to pick up on it.
Okay.
You mentioned assets. So the statistics indicate that CPS has $11 billion, B as in boy, assets, and $2.8 billion in annual revenue. Can you talk a little bit about your management style? You have over 3,000 employees. So how do you approach management of all these assets and people?
Well, look, a CEO's job, in my opinion, is to be the biggest ambassador for the organization. There are, of all that, the $11 billion in assets and the $2.8 billion in revenues, none of that would be remotely operational or valuable in any way without our 3,000 plus employees. We have employees that I consider us, we're a city within a city. I mean, of course, we have engineers, but we have accountants, we have nurses, we have marketing people, lawyers, security people, people in the field of all types of crafts and skills. It takes every single one of our people, even if the title is the same, the effort individually matters in terms of how we are making sure that we're doing really well. I, in fact, am not the expert at running this utility. And matter of fact, most people would keep everything away from me, even an accounting system if they could. I don't even know how to book an entry anymore. There are expert people that know how to do that. So I am in no way functionally valuable other than to be their support system and think about things strategically and kind of set the course and path. What I do try to think about all the time is how well are our team members aligned with where we're trying to go strategically. And so I notice things like somebody being stuck. They're fighting the organization. They're upset maybe because we didn't take their suggestion or something like that. And that is a complete distraction. And I will spend time with them talking about, we need you to align. And I will also periodically, I stay fairly strategic, but when I do want to look at something, I will look at it layer after layer after layer after layer until I'm comfortable. The scariest thing that I ever did as a leader was not delve down, what I call the Reagan principle, or most people do, trust but verify. And the verification is not to I got you individuals or the organization. It is actually to make sure, again, that we're aligned, and that if there is something structurally that's going to take us off our alignment, it's my responsibility to identify that. And then it's really then everyone's responsibility to do that over and over and over again, because it actually is the gaps in our organization that is where we are weakest. It is when we are fractured that we are weakest. We are subject to fail. We are subject to lose the synergies that we have and trip over ourselves, those kind of things. So in my leadership style, people have a lot of authority. I think they don't, because when I do go in to drill down, it may hurt a little bit, because I'm pretty piercing in what I'm looking at. But most people around here, 95% of the time, I'm not really imprinting on them at all, maybe almost 99% of the time. So people have a lot of authority. I just like them to keep it aligned.
Thank you. I might remind the Technical Women's Network members that you do have Slido technology. Please text any questions in. I have several more, but we want to be sure and engage the twins community in this interactive discussion with Paula. So
Please do.
And if you have any questions, please do follow up, and Andrea can help you with that. So my next question is picking up on the management style and as you said, drilling down. So CPS Energy has a premier credit rating, which is fabulous and so important. Would you say that with your financial background, that same management style you just described is also how you secure and maintain that credit rating?
I am super fortunate. All the employees that are currently here are beneficiaries of a lot of great thinking before we ever came on board. It fascinates me that CPS Energy has a huge geographic reach, about 1,500 plus miles. But when I was growing up here, I was born and raised in San Antonio. We probably never left our neighborhood, let alone our side of town, and there wasn't all this growth that we ultimately have. And as we are thinking about these decisions that were made, there was always this really conscientious effort about not only making good high-level transactional decisions, but making sure that we had good underlying credit and value. I inherited that. Now, I will say, when I came into the industry, I came and became CFO in 2008, and I studied under my financial predecessor, a gentleman by the name of Rick Williamson. And Rick, he was born and raised in the industry, right out of college, came here and moved himself up in the organization, stepped down, and then moved himself to the top of being a CFO. And when I met him, he was very focused on credit. Before 2008, like in 2006, there was this surety industry that would prop up what we call prop up credits. You could be a B-rated credit and you could get propped up. I mean, theoretically, if you paid enough money with an insurance policy, you could prop yourself up to AAA. So people would come to us all the time and say things like, your credit rating doesn't really mean much, because a company that doesn't have the same controls and conservatism and focus on the foundation, they can have the same credit and float bonds the same way you did. And my predecessor said, I don't care. We will make sure that we are functionally strong at our foundation, as well as when we go to market, it is our credit and the goodness that is really on the line. And if someone is as good as us, fine. When the market dislocated in 2008, that whole surety industry got wiped out. And so you couldn't prop up credits. It was the underlying value of the company that mattered. And because we are not AAA, we are AA plus is our top credit rating. But that is in the top 2.5% of all utilities. And when that dislocation happened in 2008, we fared better than almost anyone, because now what you have is people have a flight to quality. They look for the quality of the organization because they want to know that when they invest in our bonds, we're going to make the right strategic and forward-looking decisions. So we take our credit rating as a badge of honor that symbolizes all the good decisions that our 3,000 employees make, and everything again matters. The alignment matters, and then bondholders trust us to make sure that they get their protection of principal and a return.
And you mentioned the crisis then in 2008. As we move further and further from that year, do you think that perhaps philosophy will change around the surety industry, or
No.
that was emphatic.
That was a deep lesson learned. And I didn't mean to stop you, but on top of that, what happened, I'm going to geek out a little bit, is so before that financial clip was happening, the interest rates across the banking system were much higher. But when the dislocation happened, it happened in the financial markets, it happened in the commodity markets. And that was why we went through a long period of very low interest rates and almost negative interest rates. So I think it's now when you see stabilization of interest rates, they're nowhere near where they were. And I think for the foreseeable future, people are going to still not to want to have mortgage-backed securities and these surety companies, again, that hide what an entity really is. I don't see it coming. If it comes back, those are high-risk investments. They'll pay a higher return, but they'll have a higher likelihood of failure. And so I think most investors won't be attracted to them.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. So I understand from your statistics that you have about 840,000 electric customers, 353,000 gas customers. Sometimes tensions can emerge between gas and electric. Can you talk about how that works and whether there are any challenges associated with being a vertically integrated and the largest gas and electric municipal utility?
Wow. Okay. There's a lot in that. Customers don't get conflicted. They know what they want. We've been in the gas business longer than we've been an electric company, and that because that's the way the industry was. And so ultimately, utility scale energy production relied on gas as a primary source, and we've kind of grown in the industry. But a customer can decide whether or not they want an all-electric, we don't force them to, or if they want a combination of electric and gas. Some neighborhoods are built that way, and some people prefer cooking with gas. Some people they prefer heating with gas. And from an efficiency standpoint, sometimes in homes, that combination is most helpful. Now, appliances have been for a very long time, getting much more efficient on the electric and the gas arena. So we don't find that controversy at the customer realm much. But we do find it kind of in the environmental realm where we have stakeholders, particularly if they're focused on the acceleration of decarbonization. They are very frustrated with our investments currently in gas. And that is a ongoing, increasingly significant conversation that we have. Now, a couple things. We appreciate the conversation. What we believe is as long as any conversation is civil and allows true dialogue, we are interested. And environmentalists here locally, though, are focused on San Antonio because we are municipally owned. We do have a mayor and a council that's focused on climate adaptation and action. And so the whole conversation is really, I think, about velocity of change. Because I say no matter what, no matter what the spectrum of what you believe, I don't know anybody who doesn't want clean air. I don't know anyone. Even if you don't really believe in climate change, which I don't know who that is, and when I run into, I do know a few people. I will tell them, we don't fight climate change. We have to live in the changing climate today. When you're talking to them, I try to remind them that you may not really believe, but your utility company in 2017 we had tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, black ice, and snow. Even snow is a rarity in San Antonio. And all of that happened at one time. And then realizing when you're an operations company, you send your employees, you send your field people, you send your warehousers, you send your communications people, your executives. there is no way we as a utility are declining that there is climate change. What we talk about, though, is how do we create a change in which we can manage our system security, the safety of our systems, reliability, resilience, environmental impact, and the brass ring of affordability. We have the unique challenge of trying to effectuate that change, not just through ideology, but real solutions. And so it's okay, though. We have somebody whispering in our ear, go faster, go faster, go faster. But we have to make sure that we keep it all in balance and not to cause some other environmental injustice or social injustice because we've hiked up rates fast because we're too enthusiastic. And what we believe is we can get there. We believe 2050 is a very manageable goal to get to more decarbonization. Can you get to zero? Going back to your original question, we don't know how you get to zero without working on decarbonizing gas solutions more. It is abundant, it is effective. If we could take out the emissions and improve the technology, we think you can definitely get to zero because there's so much existing infrastructure, not just here, across the globe, that relies on carbon-based fuels. So we actually want the energy industry at every realm to reinvest as much as it can in technology development. Is it carbon capture or is it something else? We think there's got to be something. We think everything has to be a solution to get us to net zero, but we don't believe that you can take anything off the table right now.
Excellent, thank you. I think we have a question that's been.
Yes, Paula, this is for you. Based on your experience, what advice would you give to early career women that aspire to become leaders in the electric industry?
Well, two things I like to tell people is say yes. I am shocked on how many times that people say, God, I never get an opportunity. Nobody ever gives me a chance. Nobody's paying attention to me. And then somebody walks up and gives them an opportunity. And then all of a sudden the evaluation starts happening. Well, what is that opportunity? How much does it pay? How long will I work? What will I do? How much authority will I have? What my utensils look like? I don't know. But there's all this and I've seen it in books. I go, if you're going to get an opportunity, be more specific and make sure that people tell you exactly what they want you to do. Well, promotion and advancement is actually more about ambiguity, not black and white. And I have loved people asking me to do stuff where they don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do because that means I get a chance to make it happen. And so I remember early in my career, I was just getting ready to get promoted into vice president here. I had been a vice president at another company, but when I came to the utility industry, I had to take a pay cut and I had to take a demotion and title. I didn't care. San Antonio was important to me. But after a couple of years working, the CEO calls him and he says, hey, I'd like to make you the vice president of administration. And I said, awesome. Yes. I don't even know if he said, I'd give it to you. I think I said yes before he said I would give it to you fully. And I said, sure, I would do that. And he said, well, that's awesome. I'm glad. He's on the phone. He's not even looking me in the eye. But he needed to get done. And so I said, that's awesome. And I said, yes. And then I said, well, what does that mean? Because we didn't have one. There wasn't a vice president of administration before that. And he said, oh, you'll do HR and fleet and supply. No, it was purchasing. It wasn't even called supply chain. That's how long ago it was. I said, sure. But he had never put it together. But actually, that was great because I could put it together the way I wanted to. He gave me flexibility and opportunity to do that, and I could tell him where I was headed. And that was more enjoyable to me in the long run to craft my future in a way that meant a lot. So say yes. And I've also had women say things, more women than men again, that say things like, well, I don't want it right now, but if I could get it 2010 on April 1st or whatever, I want it then. And I said, you cannot dial opportunity when you want it. It is a bilateral relationship. The organization will give you an offer and you got to decide whether you want to take it then. And does that mean that there isn't some great offer right around the corner that you wish you would have had? Probably. But in a career, and this disappoints my daughters greatly, in a career where you're going to work 20 to 40 years, you can miss an opportunity as long as you've leaned in the first time to learn something, and then you can move on. So I would say, say yes. And the other thing is take a risk. I've had people say, well, I don't know if I want that one because I could fail. Yeah, you get nothing unless you take a risk. The reward and risk factors, it still exists today. You take no risk, you get minimal to no reward, you are satisfied to be in your status quo. Take a risk and the benefits might be huge, and typically they are.
Good. Thank you to the twin member who called that in. I really appreciate that. And please, to all of the Technical Women's Network members who are listening in, feel free to keep sending in your questions. We want to make sure that you're as involved as possible in this discussion here today. So, Paula, you did mention that you did take a salary cut and a demotion to enter electricity, and that you're, of course, from San Antonio, and you wanted to be sure and support San Antonio. But what drew you specifically to electricity?
An opportunity. I can't, looking back, I mean, I've been out here a long time. I don't really remember whether it was me not going to check in the recruiting office at college. Maybe CPS Energy came to St. Mary's and I just missed them. I was an off-campus student, so I didn't stay in the dorm because we didn't have a lot of money. I just, put my money together to take classes. So it could have been that. Or actually, I think it also could have been maybe they weren't recruiting at my school. I went to public. I got my associate's degree at the community college, and then I transferred to St. Mary's University, a small Jesuit university. And it was tiny, so maybe it was that. I don't remember, but I remember after taking my first job a couple blocks away, I was an accountant at a firm called Ernst & Winnie that does not exist in its original form today. It was Ernst & Ernst even, but when I took that job, I remember meeting a few people and realizing I'd never get into the energy industry because at the time, they only wanted people that they could get either out of high school or college. And so they didn't want you to be impurified by outside utility thinking. They wanted to grow you in the organization, and people who tried to come into the organization after working somewhere else for years, they weren't super interested. But it just so happened that the CEO of the time, Milton Lee, he said, you know what we need great experts within, and we need to pepper in some executives who aren't from the industry that think a little differently. And I just happened to be crossing someone. A recruiter called me. But I was actually on my way to move to Houston. My company was moving its corporate office to Houston, and I wasn't really super excited about that. So I got the phone call, and they interviewed me in the industry like 3 times, and I had never been interviewed 3 times. I went from a individual interview to a 2-person interview to a panel interview. This is 15 years ago. And I was like, what? That was a lot. I was almost going to say, no, they're just trying to waste my time. But somehow they said she came back all this time, so they let me in. But I felt fortunate, and I do remember when I finally figured out what we do here, meaning we provide a really critical service, I believe selflessly, for the greater good, and most people don't even have to worry about what we have to worry about. It has been the best experience. It's been the best place I've ever worked. It has meant more to me to serve here than any other position I've had. I was excited. It was weird, though. I'll tell you one other joke, not joke, but something funny to me. So where I came from was a food service company that is called Luby's. And we used to count Luann platters. So we would count the margin of contribution on a Luann platter. Like you had a fish and 2 sides and a bread. We knew how much margin. When I came here, we were counting kilowatt hours. And I couldn't make the transition at first. I'm like, what is that, right? Can you count it? And so to move from a tangible to an intangible based upon a very tangible infrastructure, it kind of blew my mind greatly. But I put myself in learning mode. I mean, everybody taught me something, from the clerks to people in the field. And there were so many interesting things about the industry, and it's just gotten more and more interesting every day I've been in it.
That's a wonderful story. Thank you. Thanks to somebody in the Technical Women's Network. We have another question, please.
So we're aware of the gender wage gap that exists today. What strategy should we take as an individual and in management?
Well, let's see. This is a great one. Look, I'm going to be absolutely honest. Municipal power in itself is our salaries are depressed, particularly at the executive levels and very much at the CEO levels. All of them, men and women, and I'm no different. However, we are owned by the city of San Antonio, which is a completely different industry and background. And the community has a hard time understanding the salary perspective, and puts a lot of pressure on our board and council members about being a government employee. So it's a little hard for me to advise you on how to, skip over this issue, because I'm basically living it. And it probably feels a lot more focused. I would say that some people, they're not gender biased per se, but they're not necessarily going, hey, we just need to, equalize salaries, because of this whole new discussion on pay for performance and gender neutral pay. So I have to say I'm willing to be kind of the poster child of this issue, that salaries aren't necessarily fair and equitable across the industry, and they're not always gender equal at all. So, but that said, I've been out here a long time. I've gained so much success in a community that I love, that I was born into, and I feel fortunate. Again, I feel good about what I have, and I feel good about talking about this issue for the greater good of people in the future. I see hope in the future. When I look at manager level compensation, I don't see gender bias. When I look at executive compensation throughout our organization, I don't see gender bias. We have one of the most diverse leadership teams, I think, not just in municipal power, but in the industry broadly, probably maybe even globally. And so I believe that excellence and overtime and continuing to discuss about it is really important, and it's up to me and other incumbents to watch out for people that are coming along the way. And I think our industry will make great strides. Look, I think if you're in it, I mean, don't go by salary.com and assume that is the exact way to determine your full financial worth. But I do think performance matters, and looking about who's getting rewards, and asking your boss about whether or not you're considered, clearly you're getting all the consideration that you can get in terms of fair compensation, and telling them that it's important to you and keeping the conversation going. If you do that from where you are as you're emerging, and we and leaders and CEOs are thinking about it consciously, I think the future for everyone else is much brighter.
Good. Very thoughtful. I appreciate that. I think we have more questions. Is that right? No? Not yet. Okay. Then I'm going to continue on. So for those who are phoning in, and perhaps for some of those in the room, you may not be aware that CPS and EPRI sponsored a conference here in San Antonio this week, the Electrification Experience, which was fabulous. And Paula was on the opening panel with former DOE Secretary Ernie Moniz, and did a great job, and so that was a wonderful time to hear her thoughts, some of which she has touched on today. But one of the things, Paula, that you mentioned that day, and again, you're on EPRI's board, which we appreciate, so we infer from that that you also value technology, as do we. You said it was very, very important.
Oh, yeah.
And so can you talk a little bit more? You've outlined some of that in terms of where you see this industry and your company going from now until 2050. But can you talk about some of the technologies that you see emerging that you're most excited about?
Well, very good. My team just flagged me. I got 5 minutes. Is that right? Okay, so she's telling me I'm revving up. I need to rev down a little bit. Bring it in, right? So I am easily wrangled. As a meerkat that is well trained. So, yeah, absolutely. Again, I think when I entered, we had the, if we build it, people will come. We were able to design growth and think about, it's going to be, the next one's going to be a coal plant that 15 years ago, we decided to build a coal plant. We built one of the last ones in the nation, and it has all the best environmental controls. We use ultra low sulfur coal, and the assets valuable, but we know it will struggle because of the competition from gas. But it was those big decisions, coal, move to gas, more renewables, more wind, more solar. But actually we need technology that makes things better. So wind and solar are awesome, but without energy storage, not super effective, because they are, as we all know, they are weather dependent, time of day dependent. And so we need a lot more technological breakthrough on things like energy storage. Will it be lithium-ion batteries? Will it be something else, some other chemistry? We need people to be absolutely energized about that, so that we can decarbonize the grid with more effective renewables than we have today. And that's just one major problem. We need more innovation in technologies that we're not even thinking about. We need more innovation in environmental improvements, and how to make sure that the sustainable aspect of the things that we're trying to do maintains a high quality of life. That is going to be enabled by technology. The challenge is, most customers believe that we're done and that we could do this stuff today, and it's all we don't convert to solar because we just are refusing to do so. But when a customer talks about that to me, I said, look, you can put your hand out and you could feel the sun, but that is not solar energy. You need technology, innovation, and infrastructure, and we need to make it better. And so we are encouraging this innovation through competitions locally with customers in mind, internally, in our intern programs. There's many ways that we can do. We also have a new energy economy for new advancements of people wanting to come here. So we are trying all we can. And the last plug I'll give is we also have a partner called Epicenter, which is now a convening perspective that's helping us and helping public power and actually IOUs across the nation think about innovation in a whole new way. And I'm really excited about where we're headed with that.
Fantastic. So this is the epicenter of innovation right here at CPS Energy, and with Paula Gould Williams. And Paula, I know you've had a long day here with multiple speaking engagements, and so we really appreciate your taking time out of the afternoon to join EPRI's Technical Women's Network. Thank you to all of those in the Twin Network that did call in, and thank you to everybody here at CPS for all of your support. You've all just been terrific and so hospitable, and I thank you, and thank you, Paula.
Thanks, everyone. I hope everyone had a good time and it was convenient. Have a good day.